The first time I saw him, I thought the universe was mocking me. The second time, I realized it was trying to tell me something. Denver International was its usual chaos of delayed flights and overworked business travelers. I was one of them, tie crooked, coffee cold, patience gone. I had just closed a deal that could change my company's future, but I felt nothing. Then, as I sat at gate 47 scrolling through another string of lifeless emails, I looked up and there he was. A guy in a faded denim jacket, dark curls tumbling into his eyes, camera in hand, smiling at the light like it was a long-lost friend. He wasn't posing, he wasn't trying, he was just alive. And somehow that annoyed me, because I wasn't. Our eyes met for maybe 3 seconds before the boarding call broke the moment. He disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind a feeling I couldn't quite name. A week later, it happened again, this time at LAX. Same guy. Same carefree smile. Except now he noticed me too. He waved, like we were old friends. I almost didn't wave back. But something about his confidence, or maybe his warmth, pulled a reluctant smirk out of me. He crossed the terminal with that easy stride people have when they're not in a rush to be anywhere. "You again," he said, grinning. "Either I'm being stalked, or fate's got a weird sense of humor." "I'd say the same," I muttered. "But I'm not the type to believe in fate. Guess that makes one of us." He stuck out his hand. "Eli." "Ryan," I replied. His hand was warm, firm, real. We talked until boarding started. He told me he was a travel photographer freelance, broke and happy. I told him I was a corporate strategist, stable, wealthy, and miserable. He laughed at that, and for some reason I didn't mind. When he left, he said something that stuck with me. "Maybe we'll run into each other again. The world's smaller than it looks." I didn't think much of it, until I did. 3 weeks later, I saw him again, this time in Chicago. Snow flurried outside the glass walls of O'Hare, and the air smelled like overpriced pretzels and jet fuel. I was grabbing coffee when I heard that same voice behind me. "Ryan, you look like you haven't slept since LAX." I turned, half in disbelief. "Eli, are you following you?" "Nah, just chasing light." He winked, and somehow I believed him. We sat together for an hour, talking about everything and nothing. About how he once slept in a train station in Prague. About how I hadn't taken a vacation in 6 years. He told me stories that felt like oxygen. I listened like a man drowning. Before we parted, he asked, "What's stopping you?" "From what?" "From living." I didn't have an answer. The next time we met was in New York. It was raining. My flight was delayed again. I found him sitting near a charging station, drenched but grinning at the sky outside. "You always show up when I least expect it," I said, dropping beside him. "Or maybe you only notice me when you're ready to." There was something in his tone, soft, dangerous, true. He told me he was leaving for Europe that night, Paris, then Lisbon. A few exhibitions, maybe a magazine feature. I congratulated him, even as something inside me tightened. "Come with me," he said suddenly. "You've got enough money, excuses, and frequent flyer miles. What you don't have is a reason to stay." I laughed it off. "You don't even know me." "Maybe not, but I know what it's like to be alive. And you," he paused, eyes searching mine. "You look like someone who forgot how." I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I was fine, that my life was full. But for the first time in years, I couldn't find the words. A month passed. I didn't see him again. Not in airports, not online. It was as if he'd vanished into the clouds he chased. Until one day, I walked through San Francisco International heading home from yet another hollow business trip, and there he was, standing at the arrivals gate, camera in hand, pointing directly at me. "Smile," he said. I froze, then laughed. "You planned this." "No," he said softly, "but maybe fate did." He showed me the picture on his camera, candid shot of me looking half surprised, half awake, eyes catching light for the first time in a long while. "You're different," he said, finally looking at the world instead of through it. "Maybe I just found the right lens," I replied. We started traveling together after that. One trip, then another. Not lovers, not quite friends, something in between. We watched sunsets in Arizona, got lost in New Orleans, argued in Boston. He taught me how to breathe again. I taught him how to plan. We were opposites orbiting the same strange gravity. But gravity has rules. And love, if that's what it was, doesn't always follow flight schedules. The first time we kissed, it wasn't planned. It wasn't even supposed to happen. It was Boston early morning, streets slick with rain, the sky still bruised from the night before. We'd spent hours walking through quiet alleys and empty cafes, talking about things that weren't supposed to matter, childhood dreams, lost chances, the kind of conversations that only happen between people who know they'll never say everything they feel. We stopped under a streetlight, breath fogging in the cold. He looked at me the way he looked at the world, like everything was worth capturing. And then, without asking, he leaned in. It was soft, quick, like a secret we weren't ready to share. When he pulled back, his voice was barely above a whisper. You don't have to say anything. But I did. I just didn't know how. Because I was still the guy who built walls out of logic and routine. The guy who measured everything in risk and reward. The guy who wasn't supposed to fall for another man, especially not one like Eli. After that night, things changed. We still traveled together. But there was a tension now, an unspoken current that hummed between us whenever our shoulders brushed or our eyes lingered too long. In Seattle, I caught him watching me sleep through the reflection of a hotel window. In Austin, he rested his head on my shoulder during a layover, and I didn't move away. But I never said it, never gave the feeling a name, until one night in Miami, when everything fell apart. We were sitting at a beach bar, the ocean murmuring in the dark. He was showing me his latest photo, street dancers in Havana, fishermen in Key West, a woman crying at a train station in Lisbon. Everyone you shoot looks like they're feeling something, I said. He smiled faintly. That's the point. People forget how to feel. I just remind them. He turned the camera toward me. Except you. You hide it too well. I laughed, trying to deflect. Maybe that's my talent. But he didn't laugh back. No, Ryan. That's your curse. The words hit harder than they should have. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're scared. Of everything that makes you human. I felt my chest tighten. You don't know what I've been through. Then tell me, he said. Tell me why you run every time something real comes your way. I'm not running, I snapped. Then what are you doing? His voice rose now, rougher. You fly to cities just to feel important. You chase deals, not dreams. You keep people at arm's length so you never have to admit you're lonely. And when someone finally sees you, you push them away. The silence after that was brutal. He stared at me for a long moment, then stood up, camera in hand. I can't be another city you pass through. He walked away before I could stop him. For the next few months, I didn't see him, didn't hear from him. I threw myself into work, back-to-back meetings, new acquisitions, awards, dinners. I smiled for cameras, toasted champagne, signed contracts that made other people proud of me. But at night, when the noise faded, I kept checking flight boards without meaning to, looking for his name, his face, some sign from the universe that he hadn't disappeared. And then, one morning in February, I found him again. Or maybe fate decided I was ready. It was JFK Airport this time. The terminal was full of red balloons and roses, Valentine's Day chaos. I was heading to a conference in Chicago when I heard the faint sound of a camera shutter. I turned, and there he was, standing near the security line, same camera, same smile, but older somehow. Tired. Eli, I breathed. He looked at me for a long time, then said quietly, You look the same. So do you. Liar. He smiled faintly. You look emptier. The words stung because they were true. We ended up in a quiet corner of the terminal, sitting on opposite sides of a row of metal seats. Between us, years of what-ifs. I shouldn't have yelled that night, he said. But I meant what I said. You were scared of feeling anything. I swallowed hard. You were right. He looked up, surprised. I've spent my whole life trying to be what everyone expected me, parents, my firm, my investors. I thought if I was successful enough, no one would notice how broken I felt. Eli leaned forward slightly. And now, Now I'm sitting in another airport, realizing I've built a life that doesn't feel like mine. He smiled softly. Then maybe it's time to start over. We missed our flights that day. Instead, we rented a car and drove north. No plan, no destination, just miles of highway and years of silence slowly breaking apart. Somewhere along the Hudson, he rolled down the window, let the cold air rush in, and shouted into the wind, "You're allowed to be happy, you know." I laughed until my throat hurt. "You're insane." "Yeah," he said, smiling, "but I'm free." We stopped at a roadside diner that smelled like coffee and hope. Sat in a corner booth and watched the snowfall. "I've always loved airports," Eli said after a while. "They're full of beginnings and endings. People saying goodbye, others starting over. I guess we're the latter." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time I didn't see chaos. I saw home. But love, even the honest kind, doesn't erase fear overnight. When I got back to New York a week later, reality hit me hard. Rumors started. A coworker saw us together. Another whispered to my boss. Suddenly, meetings felt colder. Invitations disappeared. I'd spent years building a reputation that couldn't afford scandal, and yet, the idea of losing him terrified me more than losing everything else. That's when the real war began between who I was and who I wanted to be. I started avoiding him, missed his calls, said I was busy, until one night he showed up at my office. Soaking wet from the rain, camera around his neck, same fire in his eyes. "I'm not doing this again," he said quietly. "If you want to hide, that's your choice. But I won't be your secret." I stood there, frozen. "You don't understand what's at stake." "I understand perfectly," he said. "You think love is a risk. I think it's the only thing that's real." He stepped closer. "Tell me to leave and I will. But if you don't, then stop pretending." The air between us was electric, heavy with everything unsaid. I looked at him, this man who'd taught me how to feel, who'd shown up in every airport like a living miracle, and I couldn't say it. Couldn't tell him to leave. So I kissed him. Right there, in the middle of my office, under the harsh fluorescent lights, surrounded by years of fear and pretense, I kissed him like it was the only truth I had left. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care who saw. After that, things didn't magically get easier. People talked. My company questioned my judgment. Friends I thought I had disappeared. My parents stopped calling for a while. But through it all, Eli stayed. He was stubborn, loud, infuriatingly honest, but he was there. Every day, every flight, every night I came home exhausted, wondering if I'd made a mistake. He'd just smile, hand me a cup of coffee, and say, "You can't control what they think, only how you love." And I did. For the first time, I loved without apologizing. One evening, months later, we were back where it all began, Denver International. Sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. He leaned against the window, camera in hand. "You know, I never told you why I started photographing airports." "Why?" I asked. "Because I love catching the moment when people realize they're going somewhere new. That second of hope before takeoff." He turned to me, eyes soft. "That's what you were to me, Ryan. Hope." I smiled. "You're still terrible at subtlety." "Maybe," he said, "but you're terrible at goodbyes." "Then it's a good thing I'm not saying one." We never stopped traveling after that. Sometimes for work, sometimes for no reason at all. We learned that love doesn't need a destination, it just needs a reason to stay in motion. Every time we passed through another airport, we joke about fate and flights and all the chances we almost missed. And sometimes, when the world got loud again, he'd take my hand, point his camera, and whisper, "Smile. You're living." And I would, because I finally was. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of ordinary day that becomes unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. Eli was supposed to be on a short assignment and editorial shoot in Oregon, just 3 days. He kissed me goodbye at the airport, promising to call once he landed. He smiled that same fearless smile, the one that made me believe we were untouchable. But the call never came. That night, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. A woman's voice, calm but too careful, told me there'd been an accident. The van carrying the photography team had been hit by a truck outside Portland. 2 injured. 1 in surgery. 1 unresponsive. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. The world blurred. Noise disappeared. All I could think about was every goodbye we'd ever said in an airport, every see you soon I'd taken for granted. I took the first flight out. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and fear. I sat outside his room for hours watching nurses move like ghosts. When they finally let me in, I didn't recognize him at first. His face was pale, bruised, his hands still clutching the camera even through the bandages. The doctor said he was lucky. A concussion, a few broken ribs, but he'd wake up. Eventually, I took his hand, my voice shaking. "You promised to call, idiot." He didn't answer, of course, so I talked for both of us. About work. About the cat that started showing up at our apartment window. About how quiet everything felt without his laugh filling it. And for the first time in my life, I prayed. Not to any god in particular, just to the universe that kept throwing us together, begging it not to take him away. He woke up 3 days later. His first words were, "Did you cry?" I laughed and cried at the same time. "You almost died and that's your question?" He smiled weakly. "That's a yes." I kissed his hand. "You're impossible." He grinned. "You love that about me." And I did. I always had. Recovery was slow. Weeks in the hospital, months of therapy. But Eli was stubborn. Every time he could hold the camera again, he'd take a picture of something: his coffee cup, the view from his window, the nurse who always scolded him for sneaking out of bed. He said it helped him feel alive. One afternoon, when he was strong enough to walk outside, we sat on a bench overlooking the city skyline. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to think fate was something that happened to us, like some big cosmic joke. And now I think fate's just the universe giving us chances. It's up to us what we do with them." He looked at me then, eyes soft. "I almost lost my chance with you. I'm not wasting another one." I swallowed hard. "You're not the only one who got a second chance." When he finally got cleared to travel again, he didn't go alone. We moved north to a quiet coastal town in Maine, far from the noise, the deadlines, the expectations. He opened a small gallery, filled it with photos from our journeys. He called it Departures. Each picture was a memory: airport terminals, rain-soaked streets, our reflections on glass. At the entrance, he hung the very first photo he ever took of me at San Francisco International. Underneath it, a small plaque read, "The moment I found home." I asked him once why he kept that photo there, why he didn't choose one of the beautiful landscapes or sunsets. He said, "Because that's when you stopped running. We built a life that didn't need airports anymore." Mornings started with coffee and ocean light spilling across our kitchen floor. Afternoons with Eli editing photos while I worked remotely, half pretending to read financial reports, half watching him hum to himself. We argued, of course, about laundry, about who forgot to close the window, about whose turn it was to cook. But the fights always ended the same way: one of us laughing, the other giving in. Because after everything, we both knew how fragile always could be. And that's what made it beautiful. One evening, months later, we stood together on the pier, the sea calm beneath the sinking sun. He leaned against me, camera hanging loosely from his neck. "You ever miss the airports?" he asked. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Not the chaos, just the feeling that something's about to happen." He smiled. "Something's always about to happen." He lifted his camera and took a picture of us, no posing, no warning. Just 2 men in love, bathed in fading light. "What's that one called?" I asked. He thought for a moment. "Arrivals." I smiled. "Perfect." As the sun disappeared, he whispered, "You know, if fate hadn't kept throwing us together, we probably never would have met." I looked at him, at the man who turned every airport into a love story, and said, "Maybe. But even if we hadn't, I think I still would have found you somehow." He turned, eyes glinting in the twilight. "That's the thing about love, huh? It always finds a way to land." And there, under the last light of the day, with the sea breathing softly around us, I kissed him slow, sure, grateful. No airports this time. No distance left to cross. Just us. Finally home. Months later, I found a photo in his camera I'd never seen before. A shot taken years ago, Denver International, Gate 47. Me sitting alone, staring out the window, looking utterly lost. He'd taken it the first day we met. Underneath, he'd written in tiny letters, before he knew where he was going. I smiled, tears blurring the image, because now I did, and I wasn't going anywhere. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.